Hey guys, welcome back to TFD. I am Corty. So the biggest question in this NBA gambling scandal right now is, why would a guy making $24 million a year risk everything for a small-time prop bet payout? I mean, we're talking about Terry Rozier here, someone we thought was completely immune to this kind of temptation. But now we're finally learning why he did it, and honestly, it's shocking. The craziest part, what the NBA did after finding out might be even worse. If what's coming out is true, it makes the league look 10 times dirtier than anyone could have imagined. Now, I can kind of understand when a player like Jontay Porter gets caught up in something like this. He wasn't making superstar money, only $400K a year. So if someone shady offers a quick payday, you can almost see the reasoning, right? But Terry Rozier, a star on a massive contract with no financial worries, what could possibly drive him to do this? Well, according to the FBI's latest report, the shocking truth is out, and it all starts with the person they're calling his partner in crime.
Individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing.
Man's name was Deniro Laster, a close childhood friend of Terry Rozier. They grew up playing sports together back in high school, two kids chasing the same dream. But somewhere along the way, Deniro's life went in a different direction. One day, he reaches out to Rozier with what sounds like a harmless favor. He says, "Yo, a guy just hit me up. He's offering $100,000 if I can get some inside info from you. You think you could help me out?" And Rozier, probably thinking it was nothing serious, replies, "Yeah, man, I can hook you up." He figured it's late March, a few games left, we're out of the playoffs. What's one fake injury? Just one game, one favor for his best friend. No big deal, right? Except it was a massive mistake, because that one favor set off a chain reaction that reached deep into the world of illegal sports betting. After Rozier gave Deniro that info, Deniro passed it on to a man named Marvis Fairley, a known shady gambler. Marvis Fairley was willing to pay big money for that information, $100,000, because he knew it could lead to serious profits. And that's exactly what happened. A web of bettors across the country started placing money on Rozier's unders, all on that one night. You had Shane Hannon putting $61,200 down, another guy $107K. Timothy McCormick and Long Fee Pham dropped $41,000 combined. Others threw in $20K, $17K, $12,500, even a couple of small-timers under $4K each. All told, more than $200,000 was bet on Rozier that night. All coordinated, all suspicious. And that's what gave them away. You can't have $200K suddenly bet on one player's unders in a random Hornets game on a Thursday night without raising eyebrows. Sportsbooks flagged it within hours. The pattern was way too obvious. Now, here's where the media got it totally wrong. You've probably seen headlines saying, Terry Rozier threw a game for $200,000. But that's false. The $200K was the total amount bet, not what Rozier made. In reality, Deniro Laster only received tens of thousands of dollars, probably around $20K, according to the FBI. He even showed up at Rozier's house to count the cash. There's no solid evidence Rozier even took a penny of it. He might have just told his friend to keep it. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. One bad decision, one lapse in judgment, and his entire career could be ruined. This is how even millionaire athletes get caught up, not because they need the money, but because they don't realize how deep the trap goes. Rozier's story is a warning to every player in the league. One favor can end everything. Some people online tried to claim he tanked other games, but the FBI and league investigators found no other irregularities. This was one isolated event, one stupid mistake. Yet it was enough to land Rozier in handcuffs, shackled at the wrists and ankles, forced to put his house up for bail. But for as bad as that looks on Rozier, what the NBA did next might be even worse. According to reports, the NBA actually knew about the suspicious betting way back in March 2023, but they said nothing publicly for almost 22 months. When the FBI investigation became public in January 2025, the NBA released a statement saying, in March 2023, the NBA was alerted to unusual betting activity related to Rozier. We conducted an investigation and did not find a violation of NBA rules, but we are now aware of an investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office and are cooperating. So basically, they were saying, hey, we already knew about this, just letting you know before the feds make it official. But that raises the obvious question, why didn't they tell anyone sooner? Here's the crazy part. That injury Rozier faked, it happened during that March 2023 game. You can actually see the clip. He comes off a screen, hits a mid-range jumper, looks fine, then suddenly grabs his ankle and checks out. No limp, no fall, nothing. Sportsbooks caught on fast. They alerted the NBA immediately about all those Rozier prop bets. Within days, Rozier was shut down for the rest of the season, 8 games left, but not because of any real injury. It was part of the NBA's quiet internal investigation. So, yeah, they knew. They pulled him. They just didn't say a word about it. If this cover-up rumor turns out to be true, Adam Silver and the league office could be in major trouble. Because it's one thing for a player to make a bad decision, but it's another for the entire NBA to bury a scandal for nearly 2 years just to protect its image. And that's the real story here. Not just how Terry Rozier's career fell apart over one mistake, but how the NBA's silence might have made the whole thing even worse.
Here's what he said after FBI investigation.
And Terry Rozier was allowed to keep playing after an NBA investigation ruled that there was no NBA rules violated. What do you make of that decision now amid the FBI's allegations against him?
So what happened was, because bets were placed through legalized legal betting companies, they picked up aberrational behavior around a particular game in March of 23. And so that was brought to our attention by the regulators and the betting companies. We then looked into that situation and were very transparent about it. And while there was that aberrational betting, we frankly couldn't find anything. Terry at the time cooperated. He gave the league office his phone. He sat down for an interview. And we ultimately concluded that there was insufficient evidence, despite that aberrational behavior, to move forward. We then worked directly with the law enforcement, as they said at the press conference, that the league has been cooperating. And so that was obviously over 2 years ago. So the federal government has subpoena power, can threaten to put people in jail, can do all kinds of things that a league office can't do. So we've been working with them since then. And of course, what they announced yesterday was an indictment. So 2.5 years later, he still hasn't been convicted of anything, in fairness to Terry. Obviously, it doesn't look good, but he's now been put on administrative leave. And so, there's a balance here of protecting people's rights and investigating. And as I said, we've been working with the government, and they have extraordinary powers that a league office doesn't have.
Now, look, I can actually understand why the NBA didn't tell the public right away. Because if the investigation turned out to be nothing, you don't want to destroy Terry Rozier's reputation forever over a false rumor. But here's where things start to get really questionable. They let him get traded to the Miami Heat while this whole gambling issue was quietly hanging over his head. Really? Can you imagine being the Miami Heat's GM, or even just a fan, finding this out after the fact? You're making a deal for a key player, giving up valuable assets, and nobody at the league office thinks to mention there's an active federal investigation for illegal gambling involving the guy you just traded for? That's crazy. Now, Adam Silver's been asked about all this, and his explanation was basically, we don't have subpoena power. We can't throw anyone in jail. All we can do is check phones, talk to people, and see what turns up. So, technically, if Rozier lied and covered it up, the NBA couldn't prove much more at the time, and Silver's defense is they did everything they could. But here's what makes it weird. If they knew, why didn't they tell the Heat? Why was this all hidden? Some people think Silver might have covered it up temporarily to protect the league's image, and honestly, when you look at the timeline, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow. The NBA reportedly found out about the Rozier situation in March 2023, and then, just a few months later, in July 2024, they announced their massive $75 billion media rights deal, the biggest in NBA history. During all that time, the league said nothing, not one word. You can almost picture it. This bombshell report lands on Adam Silver's desk, and he's like, nope, this cannot leak right now. We're about to close the biggest deal in league history. Now, to be fair, there's no proof that Silver purposely buried it, but the facts and the timeline make it look really suspicious. And who's left holding the bag? The Miami Heat. They traded a first-round pick to Charlotte for Rozier, who's been flat-out awful since arriving. In fact, in Game 1, Rozier was technically healthy, available to play, but wasn't even in the rotation. That's how bad he's been. So now the Heat have every right to be furious. Could they get that trade reversed? Probably not. But could they get salary cap relief or compensation for that lost first-rounder? That's something the league might have to look at. And just when you thought the scandal couldn't get any messier, the FBI dropped another wild revelation, this time about mafia-run poker games involving former NBA players. According to the feds, Chauncey Billups was allegedly used to lure wealthy people into rigged poker games where they'd get fleeced for thousands. Yeah, the mafia's celebrity bait was apparently Billups. Not exactly A-list for a crime drama, right? It's like something straight out of a bad Scorsese spinoff. But wait, it gets crazier. Reporter Pablo Torre claims that Kevin Garnett himself also played in one of those games, along with a handful of other former pro athletes. And that's wild because KG made over $300 million in his career. Are we really supposed to believe he knowingly sat down at a rigged, mob-controlled poker game for a few grand? The FBI says those games raked in around $7 million total. So if KG didn't know, maybe Chauncey didn't either. But the real crime tied to Billups seems to be that he allegedly gave inside info to Damon Jones, a former NBA assistant coach who is now accused of selling confidential player information to betting rings. That's the big new piece that came out of this latest FBI press conference. Damon Jones, a former coach, actually moving inside info to betting rings. So between Rozier's case, the mafia poker scandal, and former players selling secrets, the NBA has a serious integrity crisis on its hands. Fans already joke that games are rigged. Now there's real evidence fueling that narrative. Adam Silver needs to move fast, because if he doesn't take strong action here, the next scandal could make this one small. And the craziest part, even with all of this chaos off the court, the actual basketball this season has been phenomenal. One of the best starts in years. The Rockets' opening game was electric. But even that game exposed a major flaw in Houston's roster that might force them into another massive trade before long. The NBA might be on fire, both on the court and behind the scenes. But one thing's for sure, this season is going to be unforgettable.